If for any reason you're having issues copying an ad at some point, you want to see what the internet feed is, the MarcoAudio.net server by M5RTF chip should be up and running. We also have a live YouTube video stream that's Hilton's PY2BBQ, and they're both here with us today if you want to ask them any questions about those in the roundtable. So most of those are live streams, and they're also recorded and archived. So you can go ahead and either look at YouTube, the archives of Hilton's, or you can look at the MarcoAudio.net archives. Let me let it drop one. If you're using NetLogger, this is AA4SL Net Control, if you're using NetLogger, there's an instant message feature, the third button from the left of the button is the A window, the instant message window. If you open that up, you'll see an ongoing discussion, which is quite helpful because with roundtables, it may take a while to get to you to make your presentation. And this is an interactive way, an active way of discussing the dialogue so that the person that is speaking can read that and comment and weave it into the discussion much more fulfilling, much more effective. I hope you'll participate with that. Again, this is on the QuadNet array, so we are getting transcoding of all different digital nodes. Let me let it drop them. So letting it drop serves a few purposes. First and foremost, if anyone's on a repeater, if they're transmitting, you get often the 2-minute window there. But also, if there's any problem with us receiving your signal by not being too loquacious and exceeding the 2 minutes, it gives us a chance to make sure that we can let you know if your signal's not being received. On the QuadNet array, the housekeeping just says, give it a little time in between transmissions for this complicated system of servers and repeaters all over the world to adjust, to sync. So pause after the last person speaks and stuff and like, and before you key up, give that pause, and then after you key up, give a short pause before you talk. And the transmissions will work much more smoothly with less chance of errors those circumstances. Let me let it drop one again. At this time, is there any emergency or priority traffic for the net? If so, make your call to Net Control AA4FL. Okay, nothing heard. Are there stations with us that are on repeaters which may have a range limitation or on short term won't be able to stay on the net the complete time? If so, please call Net Control now and we'll give you priority. AA4FL.
AA4FL, this is Victor Alpha 3, Charlie Oscar Whiskey, VA3 COW. Over.
Victor Alpha 3, Charlie Oscar Whiskey, thank you for being here with us, Jay. You also have a U.S. call sign, Jay?
Affirmative. My U.S. call sign is Whiskey 1, Juliet Alpha Yankee, but I use the A3 because I'm in Ontario now.
No, I understand. It was a self-gratifying comment, Jay, because my name is also Jay. So I saw it come through on the on the announcements of who's the last heard. So that's my mention. Sorry, that's kind of a selfish thing to do, but I totally understand using the Canadian call sign when you're in Ontario, and it's good to have you on board today. Are there any? Are you on limited time, Jay, or you can do a regular check-in today?
Nice of you to ask, Jay. I actually wanted to go to talk group, I think 31107, which is the Boca Raton Amateur Radio Club. Uh, but I'm not sure if I have it plugged in. I see that I've got you through 31102, I believe.
Yeah, you're coming in to our net to the Quad Net Array. I'm not sure. You mentioned a number for Boca. I guess I'm a member, or I have been a member of the Boca Club myself, because I have a place in Delray Beach, but I don't really know the details for their DMR. Um, so if you intend to do that, are there any questions you have of our net before you go looking for the Boca group? Over.
No, as I'm new to it, I do thank you for asking me. Very considerate. Appreciate that. So I wish you 73 and to everybody on net. And I'll spin the dial and perhaps come back afterwards. Thank you, Jay. VA3COW. Clear.
QSO. And by the way, we also have another member who is a regular on the net who's a member of the Boca Club. So if you're a part-time Boca resident, hopefully we can all get together when you're down there, Jay. I go back and forth to South Florida. Have a great day. Sounds great. Are there any other stations on limited time? Oh, go ahead and make your call to AA for us on that control. And I've heard on the early check-ins and the check-ins to date, we have AA4FL and 9OML, PY2 BBQ, and 5 RTF, and 3IM, K3FZT, WA1EXA, WA8B, and now BA3COW. At this time, I'm going to open up for regular check-ins. Make your call for the control, AA4 Health, for the medical amateur radio council, DVNet. No additional check-ins at this time. We'll go ahead and start conversation. Now, if anybody's listening that hasn't checked in and you want to listen, of course, you're welcome to. You don't have to be a market member to participate, though. So we'll allow check-ins a little later. I hope you find the conversation interesting. Last week we had a discussion of Omicron BA2 variant, subvariant, and we also discussed what was going on with international investigation on ongoing input as to the creation of variants, the genetics of the actual virus and the changes that are occurring from different parts of the world and the individuals that are responsible for monitoring that. So I'm sure lots changed in the last week, as I mentioned before, early check-ins to one of our other members. It's been a quiet week in the news, comparatively so, because of the Ukraine crisis, and seems to be dominating. And I know there were some changes in the vaccine booster recommendations. So let's go ahead and have our conversation starting with Howard N9OML, and we will develop the discussion further everyone officer. Go ahead, Howard.
Thank you, Jay. Good morning to everybody on the net. I hope everyone is doing well. Obviously, I saw the news like everyone else throughout the week. The question that resonates with me is the, as I understand, the vaccine is approved now for adults as little as 50 and older. What's not clear to me is whether it is simply a fourth dose of the original mRNA vaccine that was approved, or whether there's been any effort to optimize it to the current state or current development uh, in the course of the COVID disease and the variants and subvariants that we've dealt with. If it is not, whether it's prudent for someone to be vaccinating now, or if there's any reason to wait in the event or for the development of a new vaccine. So that was the only kind of ambiguity that I saw. Otherwise, the interesting point that I heard made by one doc was that regarding BA2, apparently we've been historically throughout the course of the COVID disease tracking several weeks behind the UK with very similar results. But that served as a pretty good proxy for predicting what would be occurring here in the U.S. And for some reason with BA2, we're lagging further. And they're not sure whether that's just a little ambiguity or confusion, a little noise in what's developing, or whether it marks any kind of departure from the previous track. So those are the only two things that stood out to me. I'm afraid I don't have any answers, but if any of the docs are able to further develop that, it would be of interest to me. And I don't know that control.
10-9 OML in the group, AA4FL. Good point, Howard. I mean, I was under the understanding that we're still dealing with just the original vaccine with the booster, and that specificity to the newer variants was yet to come. I see Steve is, I'm not exactly sure what the links are about, but there's a few links that Steve, K3FCT, is posting on AIM, and when he comes time for his discussion, he'll be talking about those links. So if you've got the instant message feature on NetLogger, you might want to go ahead and take a look at that. You know, I have another question in addition, Howard, that maybe someone can answer in the group. Because I'm getting ready to go to Europe, and it'll be right after 5 months out. I didn't hear how many months they required for the fourth shot, for the second booster. So I initially heard some conversation about 5 months. Maybe that was research out of Israel and Pfizer one. I'm not sure. I don't know the details. If anyone knows the answer, if it's a 5 month or 6 month, certainly be important information for everyone to know, but also on a personal side, it would help me greatly. So let's develop the conversation and continue on the line. PY2BBQ, go ahead, Hilton.
Okay, thank you, Jay, for FL and the group. This is PY2BBQ, Hilton from São Paulo, Brazil. Uh, it's nice to be free to participate of this meeting this week. The last few weeks I've been really busy, and I was talking to Jay that last week I needed to perform some hours of training in the simulator platform of the robotic surgery system, the Da Vinci system. And that's a very interesting subject. And Jay asked me to talk about it in our meeting, and I asked him to do so in the Saturday 16th, because in the next week, as I just posted in the NetLogger, we will have the emergency communications workshops from IARO Region 2, and on Saturday it will be in Spanish, and you can laugh because I'll do a 1 hour presentation in Spanish. Uh, I hope I can handle it because here in Brazil we don't speak Spanish, we speak Portuguese. And all my Spanish I learned it in the internet. Wait one. Okay, PY2 BBQ returning to Marco Divinat. And talking about the booster of the vaccine, Jay, here in São Paulo state, we started the second booster or the fourth shot of the vaccine, and those older than 80 years old, because it took 6 months from the last booster, from the third shot. So it seems that 6 months was the timing chosen by São Paulo state government to the second booster. And the COVID-19 here in Brazil is pretty stable. We are not using masks anymore, only in the public transportation, and the number of cases didn't increase. And the bad news is that we are gonna have the carnival that was postponed from February. It will it will be held here in the next following weeks. I don't know exactly the date, but probably you'll see something in the news, in the press. So that's it for today. Good to hear from you this Saturday, and I hope you all have a great weekend. Back to you, Jay. A4FL PY2BBQ.
The QSL, Hilton, thank you very much for the detailed explanation, and I wish you success in Spanish or in Portuguese. But I understand that this will be an extra challenge for you. Probably easier to prepare than to answer questions. Hopefully, some of the Spanish speakers also have some knowledge of Portuguese. Thanks for being with us as usual as well here today. And we understand that if it's next Saturday, that you may be preempted from the net. Best of success with that. And in continuation with what Howard had mentioned, the lag time with Europe, and Howard, I was thinking that we have Europe and the UK in particular with higher case rates, with BA2 rapidly increasing more so than in the States in the lag time. We also have this seasonal weather change now. So if we're going from the UK in the cold weather months where more people were inside, as with that 3 week lag, it can make a big difference in North America, or depending on where you are in North America. It's not necessarily a fact, but it's certainly something to contemplate that when it gets here, it's warmer and people are outside and more spread out. So perhaps we won't have the same experience. History is the judge of all. We look forward to that. Jeff, RTF. Good morning.
A4FL and 5RPF. Good morning, Jay and the group. We're having a thunderstorm here in New Orleans, and of course on digital radio it doesn't really matter, but I've got 50 years of just a gut feeling that you don't talk on the radio during a thunderstorm. So I'm trying to deal with that. In the discussion so far, don't have a lot to add. People down here have just about forgotten about COVID. The only place anyone wears a mask is in a hospital, and everybody else goes on about their business. Wait one. We are just about into the festival season, which will be French Quarter Festival and the jazz festival. Jazz Fest sometimes has 90,000 people crammed into basically the size of a racetrack, which is what the fairgrounds is. So it's a lot of people real close together. So just like Carnival in Brazil, we're going to sort of see what happens from that. That's about it. N5 RTF, clear.
N5 RTF. Chip, it's great having you on board here. Last week you were crabbing, so with the thunderstorm, we won't ask you to talk. We'll be to listen, but we also know that you're not probably doing double duty at the same time. But we enjoyed the conversation, and we'll have to monitor and see what the experience is for Nollings and any other mass events here. But Nollings, just like Florida here, on our latitude, seems to be a lot warmer than everywhere else already. So people are outside and, for the most part, spread out, but in that case, not. So it'll be a good comparison check. An academic exercise. Again, history will be the judge of all. We'll have to see how the case rates do. Please keep an eye on the case rates and all and offer up any changes in trends that you see. Thank you, Jeff. This is the Medical Evidence Radio Council TV, not AA4FL, the Med Control. You don't have to be a Marco member to participate in the discussion. You're certainly welcome to monitor, but if you would like to check in, we'd love to have you here. And are there any other stations that haven't checked in already? If so, go ahead and make your call to AA4FL. Okay, one station tried to key up, and did you want to check in, David? Over. Okay. Nothing heard for late check-ins. Keith, N3IM, I'm certainly looking forward to hearing from you because you always have such a good feel for the discussion and are loquacious and able to further it. Please go ahead and pick up the thread.
Hey, 4FL, the group. This is N3IM. Well, to answer your question, Jay, the CDC is stating that a fourth booster should be given at least 3 months after the third dose. So 6 months would not be out of the question, but they're saying after the 3 months after the third dose. So I guess if you're 5 months out, you could get it. And of course, they're saying 18 plus, but most of them are saying 55 and older should definitely get it. So we'll see. Interestingly, the CDC is reporting that right now BA2 is approximately 50 to 54% of the cases being seen in the United States, while BA1 is about 40%. So BA2 has come on rather strongly in approximately 2 months. Looks like our first cases were seen sometime in mid-January of the BA2, and now account for almost 55% of the cases we're seeing. So we have to keep an eye on that and see what happens there. As far as the future, next weekend, I will not be around. I will be in Charlotte, North Carolina for the National Collegiate Boxing Association National Championships as a ringside position. So we're leaving Tuesday for Charlotte, and we'll be back till probably Monday. So I won't be here for next week's net. Break. Something we need to keep an eye on too is the concept of long COVID, which I am going to try and put the Mayo Clinic um, report on long COVID onto the Facebook page, and it's kind of interesting to read. It'd be interesting to hear any information from Chip as to whether he's seen any of the post-traumatic stress disorders, depression, anxiety associated with long COVID. That's it from Central Pennsylvania. This is N3M. Back to the group, AA4FL.
Thank you, Keith. AA4FL. Have a wonderful time in Charlotte at the boxing competition. And we know how close to your heart that is. And thank you for the details you provided, and also for Steve, K3SZT, is posting some information about the booster, also the boosters, as to whether or not, what the dosages are and if they're the original vaccine. But I'll let Steve make that presentation when he comes due. But if you're using the IM feature, you can read about that right now and some of what he's also going to be discussing. And thank you, Keith, for bringing up the long COVID. In retrospect now, I do remember we were going to talk about long COVID today, and I'd like to evolve on that. So as we expand our conversations to long COVID, and Keith specifically had a question for Chip about post-traumatic stress, if he's seen that from people that have had long COVID personally, we'll let him answer that on the next go-around. There may be some additional questions that Chip can expand upon too from others, so let's wait till we get through one round here. K3SZT, Steve, go ahead.
AA4FL and Annette. This is Steve in Philadelphia, K3SZT. So, I consider Eric Topol a relatively authoritative source, and I follow what he writes on Substack. And to the degree that I look at Twitter 2 or 3 times a week, I will look for his stuff. Earlier in the week, his Substack post is why I feel relatively informed on the status of boosters. Basically, he said maybe May, more likely June, there might be reformulated mRNA vaccines. He also wrote about how the mRNA vaccines differed, Moderna versus Pfizer-BioNTech, in terms of some real fine points of immunology that, frankly, as my wife would say, caused my eyes to glaze over. But out of that, his conclusion was break. Out of that, his conclusion was it was worthwhile to switch from one mRNA vaccine to the other for the 4th booster if you had not yet done that. As my wife and I had not yet done that when we went to get our 4th dose of vaccine as a booster, we switched from Moderna to Pfizer-BioNTech. Everything I'm speaking is anecdotal and tertiary source, so all of you physician, health practitioner scientists will choose to reach your own conclusions, I'm sure. But that's what I have been thinking and acting upon. So back to you, Jay, AA4FL. This is Steve in the West Mount Airy section of Philadelphia, J3F
Well, thank you, K3FCT. Thanks for sharing that information in the personal aspect. I will continue that personally as I schedule my vaccine here over the next few days. And thank you for posting links to Eric Topol's information. So I personally will look at that too. And if those of you that have a NetLogger instant message window available, please refer to the links to get the detail. And since I think we mentioned talk about long COVID today, perhaps for next week we can just go ahead and continue whatever discussion we started on long COVID today, and specifically look for details on that long COVID for next week. And let's look at the topic of conversation for next week and get that out quickly on the listserv. Sorry if I've been remiss, but I was in the middle of a switch of residences and I was traveling back here to North Florida. Let me let it drop. I'm going to go ahead now and turn the mic over to one of our regular participants and sometime fills in for me as net control, which I greatly appreciate. The voice of the Northeast in our net here, from at least the New England states. Anyone here? Okay, Mark, go ahead.
There we are, WA1EX, right? Well, thank you there. Voice of the Northeast. I thought it was the voice of Cape Cod. Anyway, we're doing fine up here. It's not as nice up here as it is down south. Our temperature is about 30s in the evening and about 40 during the day. And except we've had a lot of wind, which brings the feels-like temperature down. So it's still kind of nippy out there. Today the skies are blue, not too many clouds, and it looks very nice at the moment. May change. That's anecdotal up here. I'll break a second. One thing that's anecdotal up here, after speaking to a number of people in the community, pharmacists, nurses, things like that, is that there appears to be a long time lag in the time that person seems to have the effect of a COVID infection, the symptoms they go away, but it's weeks or sometimes months you still test positive. It appears that wasn't something we had before, that we saw the at-home test turning negative, and a few days or so after the symptoms seem to go away. Now we have a situation where symptoms go away, people feel perfectly fine, they keep testing and keep coming up positive. I don't know if that's something that has occurred in other places. The other question is what the people that, like myself, that recently had a bout with COVID, infection about, 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago. Does that mean I still need to get the booster? Or does it mean I can hold off on get the booster later? I don't know what the effect of having the COVID active case of it, how that would affect when you get the booster. So that's a question I have. Other than that, things are pretty quiet up here. We still have people wearing masks. I had to drop it. I was talking too long. We still have people wearing masks and public transportation, going into restaurants, anything that is public performances at inside theaters. That still's going on. So back to you if I haven't dropped out. I'll be waiting next time. I found that you were today. Well, good morning, everybody on the net. And here in Ohio, it's 42 degrees, very sunny with a little wind, still pretty cool. We had really warm weather last week, and then we got cold and rainy, and even had snow flurries. So, but that's pretty much what we expect for April and late March and early April in this part of the country. So, in terms of COVID here in Ohio, the rates are pretty high on the new variants, but the infection rate is still quite low. So, of course, I have that's statistics I get from the Ohio Department of Health as well as my real life bellwether, or birdie in the cage, as I have to say, is my daughter who's an ICU nurse who takes care of COVID patients. Is had only like one patient in the ICU in her 12 in ICU in the last couple of weeks. Usually one at a time, more than one patient. So that seems to be improving, at least at the rate. Anyway, not all of the states has that experience with it. So, as far as long COVID, I did talk briefly about that, I believe, last week. The other thing I can say about long COVID is it sounds very much like chronic fatigue syndrome, maybe some other specifics that go along with it, maybe more or less severe. The big thing that you run into on that is how do you define disability? Someone being unable to work. In a personal position and say someone is disabled, not able to work, break for time.
WJAB AA4FO isn't that a pleasant issue here to be able to attend the long postponed concert. I've had a few friends in South Florida that regularly go to concerts that have the same experience, that they're finally getting rescheduled. That's wonderful. Enjoy yourself. Are there any other stations before we go into our second go around here that would like to check in to the Marco Amateur Radio digital voice note? You don't have to be a member to check in, and we get some input from you, and our second go around will be able to enter the dialogue. So our clinicians like to check in. If so, make your call to AA4FL.
For FL and for TSC.
Okay, Jerry, I don't know how long you've been monitoring. We had other stations. I was looking for the local zone net, so I couldn't refer them to you. It was, and I don't know if the call recognition for you, but it's W1JAY. I inject into our name as a VA3COW, and his name is Jay. So if he's a member of the club, you're familiar with him. Let's talk about it later. But in the meantime, if you've been listening to the dialogue of the net, why don't you go ahead and finish out the first round of discussions? Go ahead, Jerry.
Okay, thank you, Jay. A for FL and for PSA. Yes, I know Jay, JAY, VA3COW. I used to run the M&M net on only meters every morning from the Maya Delnik net. We went to the M&M net when both of the hosts
Okay, I had Jerry drop out. Let's get another moment or two here. See if he repeats.
So based on that, I went and was anticipating that there would be a report as to what the recommendations were, and my understanding was that the recommendation was that 4 months after your last previous vaccination, you could get a booster. So my wife and I went to Publix, had a booster yesterday. Um, she had the booster for Moderna. I had the booster for the Pfizer vaccination. And the only consequence of that is I have a very, very sore arm at the point of inoculation, but the rest of my body seems to not be affected. It, in discussion with the pharmacist, he said that his understanding was that 4 months was the recommended time from your previous last vaccination, and that the dosage was the same as all the previous vaccinations with Pfizer. There was some change.
Okay, Jerry, if you're monitoring, we had you drop twice. Did get some of that. We're gonna wait a minute to see if you repeat. Okay, nothing heard. And for TFC, we're having some dropouts. If you're copying us now, Jerry, we did get quite a bit of your conversation though. So as we go through the second round of conversations, in lieu of what we've heard in the dialogue on the AIM window and on the net, a little bit of strategy, perhaps taking the alternative vaccine for your fourth dose for your second booster. And Jerry seemed to indicate that perhaps there was a difference in whether or not it was a half dose or a full dose, and not sure uh, if that matched up with some of the other information. So the safest thing to do is just ask the pharmacist, and I'm certainly going to consider switching if you're going to next booster. We also heard some information from the first call around that from Steve, I believe he said the more specified booster, the new vaccine will be available towards the end, perhaps towards the end of May, for those that are able to wait till May, so their booster is actually differentiated from the previous vaccines. That being said, we're going to go back to the beginning of the list for the second go around. And 910, go ahead, Howard.
And I know I'm out here. Thanks, guys. It was interesting, and appreciate everybody's answers. Regarding long COVID, curiosity question of mine is, what is the definition of long COVID vis-a-vis complications or injuries from early experiences with COVID? I have a former coworker who was hospitalized on a ventilator twice, once for a long period of time, who has developed cardiovascular, pulmonary, and some neural issues for which he's still having problems. And I don't know if that's considered an injury and a new problem, or whether that would be considered a long COVID case. So when they refer to long COVID, I'm not sure what exactly constitutes long COVID versus some other issue. Rickland? Another concern that I have was we have these discussions on the current situation, looking at it almost from an intelligence standpoint. I know Illinois last Friday shut down their testing facilities. So we're depending upon data from a less and less, I guess you'd say, in the intelligence business, that we have less confidence in the data we're using. It's smaller and smaller view. We're starting to look through a straw at this. And it's obviously skewed only to people that are symptomatic, coming in for treatment, being tested, and then being sequenced. So I think it's going to cause a lag time on recognizing what's happening around us again, which is an area of concern. Break one. The last thing I was going to mention is just on the kind of watching the news front, the experience with the refugees coming out of Ukraine, and particularly massing in Poland, will unfortunately be an interesting experience to watch, given that it's going to involve some mass sheltering, and then it's mass sheltering that's going to be skewed heavily to the elderly and children, with women of all ages, with their policy of not allowing men between 18 and 60 to evacuate, understandable reasons. We've taken both vulnerable ends of the spectrum and we're massing them together. I'm just curious whether we'll see any unique or interesting or stark disease trends. So those are thoughts that came through my mind. I hope everyone's doing well. If we don't have a round again, I'll say 73. Otherwise, I'll say it again when we say goodbye. And I know now. Back to Net Control. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Howard. And certainly all of us can ponder the long COVID question for another week, and we'll pick that conversation up next time, which will be third in the series. We can float the previous two live streams on the listserv and see if those have more experience with knowledge about long COVID will make an effort to come on board. And even if they don't have DV, they can listen to the stream and use NetLogger to submit questions if they are willing to download the program. So we can mix and match and maybe get a little more interest going. we have a dedicated group of individuals here. There's 10 signed ones today that are regulars and offer a longitudinal view of the discussion, not just the thread of today. And I think that's very valuable. Also, in terms of it being regionally distributed, and the question that Howard just pondered about what we'll see coming out of the two ends of the vulnerable spectrum there in Ukraine is important. We certainly have heard the concern from many of our citizens here in the United States about what goes on the southern border in that regard as well. And certainly that tends to trend to the lower end of the spectrum, the younger age. Let me know if you drop one. PY2BBQ. Fulton, some additional comments? Go ahead.
Okay, for FL and the group, this is PY2BBQ returning. Very interesting comments, especially those written by Howard. I don't have those answers. I wish I could. And just to correct some information I gave previously, I did write it down in the NetLogger, but actually the fourth booster in Brazil was started 5 months. The second booster started 5 months after the first booster. So I had said 6 months, not true. And the other thing is that it was 80 years old and over just in the first 2 weeks. Now it's for those with 60 years and up. So I think I'm 59, so probably in the next few weeks I'll be ready to the second booster. When we had the first booster, it was always the Pfizer's vaccine, because most of us received the CoronaVac, that was a Chinese type of vaccine based on adenovirus, and the third vaccine that was best matched with the Pfizer's, as previous studies showed. So, but for the second booster, it doesn't matter. You have the vaccine that is available at that day. So thank you all for listening and for sharing your experiences, and hope to meet you next Saturday. A4FL and the group, PY2BBQ, over.
Very good, Hilton. Thank you much for the clarification. And if we don't talk to you before your emergency communication workshop, the one that you're going to give in your best Spanish, best of success with that. And we're looking forward to 2 weeks from now when we pick up your conversation about robotic surgery. And we'll make an announcement to Lister and see if we get some interest going on some new sign-ins. N5 RTF. Chip, do you have some additional comments? I know there was a question about long COVID with Melvins or from post-traumatic stress disorder. Go ahead.
AA4FL and N3IM, N5RTF. Yeah, in response to Keith's question, I haven't really seen anything that meets criteria for PTSD. There are some of the features. I would have to agree. I forget who said chronic fatigue syndrome, but that's exactly what I've been thinking all along. It looks very much like chronic fatigue with just lethargy, slow thought processes, slow reaction times, people are most worried about just being able to do their jobs. They go home and just collapse at the end of the day in kind of RTF.
Thank you, Jeff. I think that was Andy, WJAB, who's had that conversation. I believe Andy's logged off here. Well, yeah, if he can clarify, but I believe he was the one that brought up the subject. K3FT, well, actually, M3IM. Keith, go ahead.
AA4FL in the group. This is N3IM. I was able to post that Mayo Clinic article on COVID-19 long-term effects. I also posted the primary series and booster and timing thing for the CDC, which I believe is for the fourth dose. As it says, plus one booster vaccine, fourth dose given on the schedule shown below, which they're saying at least 3 months. I've seen 5 months from them also. So based on what's been happening at the CDC recently with their data, I guess if you get it at 4 months or 5 months, you're probably okay. And I was also able to post the Health and Human Services guidance on long-term COVID disability for anybody's information. So those are on now. I will probably get the fourth dose because I've got some problems. I've had problems for many years, many of which have been stable. And so I will probably get the fourth dose based on that. This is N3I. I'm back to the group AA4FL.
Well, thank you, Keith. May those problems you mentioned remain quiet and in the background, and your health stay stable, and where you can enjoy life, and certainly head out to that boxing competition and do something that you really enjoy. And being at ringside in the NCAA club level events should be very exciting. Good talking to you. We'll never follow up with you personally this week. K3 about Davey. K3 FCT. Steve, go ahead.
AA4FL on the net. This is Steve, K3FZT. A small addition, my wife and I were just short of 7 months since our third dose when we got our vaccine yesterday. April 6th would be 7 months exactly. Secondly, I will not be on the net next week because my club is having a breadboarding and Arduino building session, and I'm looking forward to that. And we'll be bringing a bunch of tools, helping folks who don't know about breadboarding and such. So that's going to run from 10 to 2, and I will miss them. Beyond that, let me wish everyone best of 73s, health and happiness, and as I tell everyone these days, stay well, because life is beautiful. Steve in West Mount Airy, saying 73. Back to net. This is K3FZT.
Well, thank you, Stephen, and thank you for participating. And we will see you in 2 weeks and enjoy what sounds like a very exciting opportunity. Wish I had an event like that here to participate in, breakboarding in Arduino. That's an area that I would love to explore. Have a great time with it. Sounds great. This is AA4FL Net Control for the Medical Image Radio Council TV Net. We're finishing up our conversation here, our second roundtable discussion. I know we're a little late on the net, but there's no other net scheduled at this time for the Quad-Net Array, so we should be able to feel free to continue the discussion. WA1 here, go ahead.
Relay when EXA. First, did you copy my last transmission, or did I get cut off?
I am not sure, because it was a while ago, Mark. I know I copied a lot of your conversations, but I didn't make any notes about it. So go ahead.
Okay. Well, in case you missed the end, I said what we're seeing here is people complaining that they're testing positive long after they have symptoms go away. That seems to be something new up here. Yes, I was wondering why Hilton was giving a lecture in Spanish, because I knew that Brazil was in Portuguese. But good luck. That's about it I got. Oh, yeah, one more thing. Let me break this a minute. The Massachusetts Department of Health has dropped their emergency, their declared emergency, which has been in effect for the past 2.5 years. So, as you said, things are changing, and therefore so is the reporting. So, I will talk to everybody next week, I hope. Have a good week. WA when you next time.
Yes, have a good week yourself, Mark. And I think I don't want to paraphrase or incorrectly represent Hilton, but rather than do another go round, I believe it was a regional discussion, so it probably beyond the borders of Brazil. We have the additional terms of offering it in Spanish. I would assume Hilton's local regions are already well covered by this presentation. I look forward to reading more about that, because Mark brought up a good point. Hilton, you're serving in many capacities, and we love to hear in the June Ether all about it. So what you're doing in Brazil and what you're doing in your presentation, and it's beyond the borders of Brazil. So that can be continued in the Ether. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Hilton. I believe Andy has already departed, but let me just confirm that. WJB, are you still here? Okay, nothing heard. And that would bring us to Jerry, and for TSC. Jerry, realize you're dropping quite a bit, so you might want to keep your conversations very short. And for TSC, AA4FL, go ahead. Well, nothing heard. Well, I'm going to bring the next to a close, everyone. I look forward to next week. I'm saying 7-3. This is AA4FL, and hope to talk to you all next week. Thank you to the Quad-Net Array for allowing us to do the net here and transcoding for us, so we can all talk to each other. Closing the net and bringing the Quad-Net Array back to normal use for the amateur community. 7-3, I've got a thunderstorm here too, but I'm sitting in a room with antenna connections on QRT. AA4FL, bringing that to a close and going clear QRT.